8 months ago we created our very first Blackwater aquarium for my half-moon Betta. Blackwater aquariums are designed to mimic natural habitats with tannins and humic acids that can lower pH, reduce stress and inhibit harmful bacteria and fungi amongst many other benefits, leading to a healthier and stable ecosystem. But are they worth the hype, or are they a maintenance nightmare? Today we're back to revisit and talk about the good, the not so good, and what I've learned about keeping a Blackwater aquarium. So Blackwater aquariums are not for everybody, but in the same way that planted aquariums rose in popularity sort of in the last 5 to 10 years due to an increase in content creation and an increase in availability, particularly with regards to things like plant selections, hardscape choices, LED lighting, aquasoils, CO2 units, all that sort of thing. Blackwater is also now becoming very, very popular for very similar reasons. So again, content creation, very popular in the hobby now. With Blackwater aquariums, there is lots of websites which will allow you to buy different leaves and tree pods and products to establish that perfect look. And there's also products out there which will allow you to have all the benefits of Blackwater aquariums without the actual tanning stained water, which puts many people off. So I just wanted to bring you back to my Betta tank here, which was set up 8 months ago. Go through the good, go through the bad. Not so much bad, but sort of not so good. So let's first talk about the good. So fish behaviour. The Betta Splendum, which is in here, is my half-moon Betta. His behaviour is very different to how it was when he was in a planted tank. So I'm definitely seeing a lot more of the natural hunting characteristics of the Betta. He's sort of foraging within all the leaf litter and things like that, which I didn't see before. It did have another element to it, unfortunately. So prior to going into the Blackwater, this Betta was in with shrimp, and he didn't really bother them all that much. But when I set this tank up, I put him in with Corydoras, peppered Corydoras, and unfortunately he began to hunt them, and he did actually kill 2 of them. So it's both a good and a bad, I think, in the sense that it's good from the perspective of the Betta as being himself. Bad in the sense that it's meant that I can't really keep anything with him. Now I understand that's going to be different for every Betta fish. Doesn't necessarily mean it's because of the Blackwater. However, I think that another thing which I've noticed is that he's changed colour. Now again, this could just be genetics. Bettas can change colour. But it also could be that how he's interacting with his new environment, how he how the tannins and the environment is changing him, and that could have encouraged the colour changing. So he's sort of mottled now. He's like a powder blue, sort of mottled with a red on his body, which he wasn't before. He had these sort of purpley kind of colours on his fins, and the body was completely like a powder blue. Now it's sort of mixed in a little bit. Whether that's to do with the change to Blackwater, I'm not too sure. So one of the other things I really like, and I know it's an acquired taste, and that is the aesthetic. So obviously with all the leaf litter at the bottom, it really brings a sort of natural feeling to the aquarium. And like I said, the Betta does interact a lot more with his environment, although you can't see him at the moment because he's the only fish in the aquarium. But yeah, having all the leaf litter at the bottom really sort of gives a nice look to the tank. There's lots of different leaves and you can obviously change it up quite a bit, which in fact, do you know what? Let's prepare some more botanicals. So how I usually prepare my botanicals is I'll just boil some water up to start with. So just add in some kettle water. So I've got a number of botanicals to choose from. For this particular one, I'm going to be using the Essential Leaf Pack from Somerset Shrimp Shack. I've had these a few months now. I'm also going to be adding in some Indian almond leaves. But we'll just wait for that to come up to the boil. Okay, so that's starting to boil now. So I'm just going to drop in some leaves. I'm going to put all of these in, I think. Yeah. I'm just going to use some tweezers just to push them down a little bit as well, just to make sure that they are fully submerged. Now you may be wondering why I'm boiling these. So even though these are packaged and obviously they've all been dried out and everything, there is always that little chance that there could be something on there. But you definitely want to boil them a little bit just to be on the safe side. Obviously, if you were picking these from, you know, woodland near your home and things like that, definitely boil them. And of course, when we boil them, it's also going to get a lot of the tannins out of them. Now, it's not going to remove all of the tannins, so you are going to be still getting the benefits of adding them and getting that black water. But what I usually do is I usually boil it, pour away the water, and then I usually put them in cold water and just wait for them to fully absorb all that water and sink to the bottom. Once they've sank to the bottom, then they can be placed in the aquarium. So we'll leave those boiling and we will come back to those later. In terms of maintenance, I would say that this is probably, along with my shrimp tank, probably one of the easiest aquariums I've got to maintain. And that is because it is essentially its own ecosystem. And of course, it does have the low bioload with only the Betta being in here and some snails, of course. But it's in large part down to the filtration, which is the Oase Eco Flow. I'll come back to that a little bit later. And also, you can see here that it's good to have a good build-up of mulm in a Blackwater aquarium. That mulm layer is crucial really to microorganisms, bacteria, things like that. So you definitely want that in there. However, you don't want loads of it, and it is always good to remove some of this when you're doing a water change and also when you're topping up botanicals. So I think we'll do that now actually. So I'm going to take out a little bit of this water, and just to get some of that mulm up as well. You say we don't want to remove all of it, but it's good to remove some of it from time to time, especially when you're topping up those botanicals. And also it's good to do this just to prevent the substrate from becoming anaerobic. That's when you get like a rotten egg smell, which you don't want in your aquarium. So you can see there the colour of that. So obviously that is not all dirt. Some of it is with the mulm, but mostly that is the tannin stained water and obviously some mulm as well. That is perfect for going on your houseplants and things like that. And also I am going to be cleaning the filter out in a moment as well. So I'll briefly touch on an element which is not so good. Your filtration will take a bit of a battering. As you can imagine, with the extra breakdown of those botanicals, your filters will become clogged just that little bit more than they would do under the circumstances of having normal waste in there. So your filters will need a lot more cleaning out. Now, this is the Oase Eco Flow 60, which I bought a few months ago now, and I did a review video on this, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to just give you a little update on this as well. So this filter has worked brilliantly. You have the spray bar function at the top, which has been absolutely ideal for our Betta because you can turn the flow right down. You've also got this outlet here, so if you did want a lot more flow, you can take this plug out and it will give you a lot of flow. Definitely refer back to my original review video if you want to see just how powerful this filter can be. But what we're going to do is I'm going to take the baskets apart, just like that. And we can have a look inside and see just how dirty this has actually got by being through a Blackwater. So as you can see there, the colour of that biomedia, it is all brown and gungy. So I'm going to give that a bit of a rinse, so we'll just drop it in there for now. Keep it nice and wet. And there's also a sponge in this bottom tray as well. There we go. So we have a sponge in there as well. So as you can see, filter's generally quite grubby, but the actual proof of how grubby this really is will be in the impeller. And as you can see there, that impeller is quite grubby. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. But that is a sort of, that's what happens with Blackwater. You can see there, it's coming off in my hands. So this all needs a very good clean. So I'll give this a good clean under the tap, and I'll bring it back in a second. But look at that. That's just from a few months. So something to bear in mind if you're using a mechanical filter in a Blackwater setup, that's what you have to deal with. So that has all had a really good clean. So we can put everything back together now. Okay, so we do need to top this tank up now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check. I'm just going to check the temperature of the water using a heat gun. So it's 23.4 degrees. So we'll aim for about 25. But this brings me on to my next point really. And that is that, as you can imagine, with there being low nutrients in the water and low lighting, it does mean that a couple of things really. First of all, you don't get much algae, which is great. But the other thing is, it does mean that you can't really grow plants all that well either. So in this aquarium there are some anubiases. So this is not algae, by the way, that I'm wiping off the glass here. This is just watermarks. But yeah, there's some anubiases and bucephalandras in here. So obviously they're low light demanding plants, but they do like nutrients. So what I'm finding in this aquarium is that they are not particularly thriving. They're not dying either, but they're not thriving. So there is a trade-off there to be had between, if you are doing a Blackwater, whether you want to consider doing it without plants. That is a possibility really. I don't think you need plants in a Blackwater aquarium. Obviously I've put some in here, but I think most, if you can, go for terrestrial plants such as this one. And if I give you a quick example here of what I mean, this bucephalandra, sorry, this anubias, there is anubias barteri in the middle here. And if I just take it up, as you can see, it has not rooted onto anything. It's very healthy, as you can see there, but it hasn't rooted onto anything, mainly because it's not really getting the best environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue a rock to the bottom of this, and then we'll put it back in there, and hopefully that'll help it root a little bit better. But it's been in there for a while, and as you can see, it's certainly alive. It's just not doing the best. Before I refill that, I'm just going to be adding some NT Labs Optimus, 5 ml per 200 litres of new water. So about half a cap should do the trick for this aquarium. It's 45 litres. And because we have cleaned the filter, I'm also going to be adding some Satis, which is beneficial bacteria. And again, we'll go half a cap on that as well. Okay, so we can add back in our anubias barteri, which is now on a rock, which should just help it establish and root itself a little bit better. There we go. So this is more just a side thing, not specifically for Blackwater, but just something which I'm liking to use at the moment, is Voogle by Easy Life. Now Voogle is an immunity booster for your fish. It's a way of using it over a longer period of time, should in theory remove the potential for you needing to use harsher medicines. I have been using this in a lot of my aquariums. Easy Life say that it boosts the immunity of your fish, enhances the colours, gives them more of an appetite, things like that. And I have noticed a big difference. Now, you don't need a lot of it. For this tank, I only need about 15 mil. So I'm going to be adding this in. I add this in after every water change. And the other thing I like to add is Easy Life Pro Phyto plant fertilizer. I've been using this for a long, long time. Now I know there's not many plants in there and most of the nutrients are going to be taken up by this peace lily, but it's always good just to give your plants, even if you only got a few plants, just a little bit of a boost. So I'm just going to be adding a little bit of that in as well. And that should be plenty. So now that we talked about the good, about having a Blackwater tank, and obviously we've carried out some maintenance as well, let's talk about the not so good. So I did touch on it a few minutes ago, and that is plants. Now, although plants that are low light demanding plants like your Anubiuses, your Bucephalandras, although those plants can grow in a Blackwater environment, they're not going to thrive. As I've noticed with mine, I mean, they're slow growers anyway, but they grow even slower in a Blackwater environment. Even though I give it plenty of plant fertilizer to help it along the way, and the light is at 100% intensity, it still doesn't really make that much of a difference. So I think with Blackwater, if I was going to do Blackwater again, what I would do is I would just stick to terrestrial plants such as the peace lily, which you can see behind me, which is doing extremely well because it has more access to CO2. Or in fact, you could use aquatic plants and place them near the top of the surface so that they grow out of the aquarium. That would be much better. The second one really, and this is quite crucial, and that is maintaining a cycle, as in the nitrogen cycle. So because Blackwater environments are naturally lower in pH, it can be difficult to establish a cycle and maintain a cycle. It's also possible to crash your cycle if you add too many botanicals at once, because obviously as they're breaking down, it is waste, it is going to create ammonia. So there has to be careful considerations. Having said that, ammonia at lower pHs is actually ammonium, which is less toxic to your fish, but it's still a consideration that you have to have. And you still have to make sure that you're carefully monitoring it and doing small water changes. You will have seen on the bottom there is a layer of mull, and that is the detritus that builds up from the decaying botanicals. Now, as I mentioned, that is a place for microorganisms, for beneficial bacteria. It can provide food to your fish and to your shrimps, snails, that sort of thing. So it's quite beneficial, but too much of it can also lower the oxygen levels. So you do have to carefully consider what fish you're going to choose. Now, obviously with Bettas, they take oxygen from the surface, as do gouramis, which is why those types of fish are particularly well suited to Blackwater environments and to environments where there isn't a lot of water movement either. If you're going to be having other species of fish, you may want to consider having more water movement just to make sure that there's enough oxygen going in, being created inside the aquarium. Now, I showed you the impact that Blackwater has had on a filter. Now, this is not to say that it's going to shorten the lifespan of filters or anything like that, but as you saw from the footage earlier on, is that built up in a very short space of time, and it did reduce the flow. Now again, because there's only a Betta in this tank and there's nothing else in there, that reduction in flow is not a massive issue, in that they like the water to be almost still anyway. And of course the other thing is, depending on how dark that tank becomes, depending on how dark you want that water to be, will depend on whether you can even see your fish. And obviously as fish keepers we want to see our fish, so you might want to be careful about what fish species that you choose. Now, as I mentioned, Bettas, gouramis, a lot of tetras, rasboras, these are all going to come from naturally tannin stained waters. However, the ones you buy in the aquarium trade have probably not seen their natural environment. But it's always good as fish keepers to recreate it as much as possible. So certain fish are going to stand out more. Obviously, I've got a Betta Splendid, which has not got a, it's been bred to have those colours. He stands out very well against the Blackwater. If you had things like cardinal tetras, green neons, that sort of thing, they're also going to stand out extremely well. So fish choice, I think, is very key when you're dealing with Blackwater aquariums. So if I was setting up a Blackwater aquarium today, what would I do differently? Well, first of all, I would make sure that I didn't use any submerged plants. I just don't think it's worth it. Even the low light plants, I just don't think that they particularly thrive. And I don't think you really need them. I think to get the best effects out of Blackwater, it's probably best to have no submerged plants and then to have plants coming out of the top of the aquarium. The other thing I would probably change is in terms of filtration, and that would be I would just use a sponge filter. I just think that mechanical filtration and the increase in sort of maintenance of that filter can be particularly off-putting to a lot of people, has been a little bit off-putting to me, and I just think that, you know, for the sake of it, I think a sponge filter would be much more beneficial. So if you're wondering after this video whether Blackwater aquariums are for you, I think that if you've never tried one before, definitely give it a go. As I mentioned at the start of the video, along with my shrimp tank, it is the easiest tank to maintain in the fish room. I think that there's something beautiful to be said about creating an environment that is as close to the fish's natural habitat as possible. I think there's real beauty to be had in that, and I think that the most natural way of you experiencing fish keeping would be to do Blackwater in some kind of capacity. As I've mentioned right at the beginning of the video, and I did put some clips in as well, there are products out there that you could use if you didn't want the Blackwater look, but you wanted the benefits from it. There are products you can get now which will help you with that. But I think that I would suggest that for any fish keeper out there, if you've never tried Blackwater, just give it a go. Make sure you do your research. There's lots of information now online, lots of different content creators that have covered Blackwater. So make sure you go and check everything out, do as much homework as you can. And of course, you know, if you want to ask me any questions that I haven't covered in this video, make sure to drop them in the comments as well. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Bye for now.